Welcome back to Empathetic Presence. I'm your host, Lee, and today I get the pleasure of sitting down with my dear friend, Ssanyu Birigwa. Ssanyu is a Columbia-trained narrative medicine clinician and an 80th generation indigenous bone healer. Sanyu's practice serves those who understand that healing requires both ancestral wisdom and embodied presence, a reconciliation available nowhere else. Sanyu's work is driven by a core philosophy that we have the ability to heal ourselves. I first met Ssanyu on a very cold, dark morning about 10 years ago, and meeting her has brought so much light into my life. I'm excited to talk to Ssanyu today about how we can heal ourselves, how we move through this moment with as much compassion and connection as we can, and what the future brings when we can allow our stories to heal ourselves. Welcome, Ssanyu.
Thank you, Lee. It's so great to be here.
I have felt drawn to you and your work since I met you over 10 years ago. And I was wondering, can you tell our audience a bit about who you are and the work you
Yes.
do?
And I want to say the energy that you and I had when we first met felt very ancient and like I've known this human before.
Uh,
Um,
yeah.
Definitely a place for me to reflect in on what my work is. And part of my
Mm,
work is making connection, being really intentional about the connections I do make too. And I bring that discernment, I think might be a good word to use here, um, to my work and how I create environments, facilitate conversations that actually move the needle into doing the work. So many of us have experienced probably in our lives many times over jobs where you are making things, but do you actually use the things that you make? And I find that the work of narrative storytelling, the clinical practice of narrative medicine, which is a practice, a methodology, a method to help clinicians and physicians to be present with their patients in true empathy and true compassion and true listening. Deeply listening is a core principle of narrative medicine clinical practice. And from that training, I've been able to witness what it means to be present, be in a boardroom present, where you're actively listening to the other. Why? Because you have the tools within yourself to deeply listen to yourself, which creates this beautiful reciprocity of listening and receiving and giving and listening, receiving, giving. It's just like this constant movement. I liken it to the figure eight, the infinity sign, the Lamensket, like the ways in which that movement is drawn up and over and down and around, and where can that possibly take us? Well, it takes us somewhere because I believe that we all are curious. We are curious beings. And when we become curious from a very authentic place, we are exposing ourselves. And when we expose ourselves, we are allowing others to see us in a light, I hope, that is quite authentic. And we are being brave about people seeing that authentic part of ourselves. And so, with clinicians and physicians and doctors and those in the healthcare space, often they have a mask on. And what I'm helping those individuals do and beyond the healthcare system is to take that mask off, to be vulnerable, to connect with the other, to connect with that story of the patient that they may not have been told because other moments in time they were most focused on the chart or on the diagnosis or on the illness. as opposed to the wholeness and fullness of this individual who carries with them story, carries with them experiences that probably attribute to some of the discomfort or the dis-ease they are feeling now in this doctor's office. So what do? I am an architect. I liken that to looking at architecture of culture through a healing framework, one that really allows an individual and institutions to fulfill their mission with integrity and humanity. I am a deep listener. I am an empath. I come from a lineage of bone healers who believed and understood the importance and the presence of ancestral wisdom living in the body and the bones, and that information that we can not pull from, but connect with. So we're connecting with this embodied information that truly, I believe, can help us understand more about ourselves so we could actually show up fuller in other people's lives, in our lives, in our families' lives. And that to me is about creating healthier communities.
Wow, Ssanyu. And that reciprocity, that energy that you're talking about, I felt it so strongly, not only the first morning that I met you, but when you've come to my town to work with local activists in my community. I felt it at every networking event we've been to together, every time I've seen you speak and work. And can you talk about like who you serve? I hear the work around narrative medicine, but I know that your work goes so much beyond healthcare.
Yes, it does. And thank you for guiding that question, because what's really important for me and my purpose is to bring the work of narrative medicine. I like to describe it from the gates, of Columbia, because there are only two places in the world that you can get a master's in science degree in narrative medicine out into the world. So you just mentioned I work with local activists, whether it's here in the U.S. or on the continent of Africa. I work with organizations that focus in on authenticity, trust, resilience within the workplace, within leadership models. I work with individuals on how to refine the tools that they have in their toolbox as to the ways in which they have developed their own leadership skills, and to looking to refine and maybe even deepen into rituals and practices that are going to move them in the next iteration of their lives, whether it's their personal lives or professional lives. I work with young people. I love mentoring young people in the world to find, what is their purpose? How are they going to achieve their desires and create the vision of success for themselves, using the tools of storytelling, of indigenous knowledge and wisdom and practices to really be the highest performer that one can be. I mean, Lee, we have met in spaces and places where we've watched people literally perform, which
Mm.
they think is attracting, you know, but in fact, it's repelling. So I work with people to take off the mask, to understand that maybe they have been wearing a mask all this time, that which they thought they were being truthful and authentic with themselves and others. And that's just a really, I think, wonderful place to be. I was just working with an individual this afternoon, and so I do one-on-one work, not just, community building and, corporate, workshops and trainings. I do work with, individuals one-on-one. And we talked about fear and the basis of power that comes from being in a place of fear. especially when we can acknowledge we're fearing something, and then we just go into that fear nonetheless, like we just go there.
Yeah.
Um, and what happens when we do that um, can be such a teacher to us, and also illuminate far greater experiences than we probably could have ever imagined, that is for our highest and greatest good. That's that's the deliciousness, I think, of the work that I do, is that I get to be a witness of not just the other, but myself within this space of making connection, deeply listening to the other, and having the willingness and capacity to sit in my own discomfort so
Mm.
I can hold space for an individual who might be moving through discomfort themselves. There is a reason why I did not become a physician. One, I don't test well. But two, being a physician, I am bonded and binded by an oath that which does not allow me to share my own personal stories. And that, to me, I think, is the most potent piece of the work that I do, is I can receive one story, and two, walk beside them and share parts of my lived experience that perhaps may inspire them, feel a little bit more supported, curious, and use those opportunities to share my personal story as a way to connect with the other, and to be able to then, usually what happens, receive the other's story in kind. Um, and is there a way that we can start to use that experience of telling, receiving story as a potent tool in making change in the world? You know, we got
Mm.
to do things differently. We just
Yeah.
have to. What we were taught, even as young people, is not
Yeah.
useful for youth right now.
Right. 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 I keep saying to so many of my clients, like, what got us here is not what's going to get us to the next place.
Right.
Right. And you're even what you just said is again that reciprocity, this exchange, this dynamic movement. And what you're speaking to is like our whole selves, right? Of helping people take off those masks. And so much of our American culture, especially at work, is about really like siloing ourselves, right? And
Yes.
like leaving some of us outside. And of course, that's impacting underrepresented people most of all. And it's benefiting certain people more than others. But can you talk about this unmasking, and particularly in the context of work or the other roles that we play? And why is this important?
Yes. And I'll begin with a short story. The practice of narrative medicine is to use art and music and prose literature, the voice even, to elicit something within us that has been perhaps dormant. So in my practice, whether it's in university settings or one-on-one teaching or trainings in different institutions and industries, I'm always pulling out something that I hope that we can resonate with. And there is a poem by Maya Angelou, We Wear the Masks, and she recites it, and you can find it on YouTube. And I find it very powerful, not only to listen and watch her recite this poem, but to then read the poem itself. And so, why I bring this process out to sit with her words, the tone that she uses, and then to then read the words, is because many of us have put on masks with our family. We have been told we're wearing a mask when we may think we are not.
Hmm.
We literally wore masks from 2020 to 2023. Some of us I see are still wearing masks. I live in New York City. I'm witnessing people with the masks on. What does a mask do? Well, it covers something up. It hides something. These masks that we are using, the proverbial mask and also the physical mask, is a tool for silence, right? So,
Yeah.
how many of us have felt we have been silenced or we are actively silencing ourselves because we're either too afraid to use our voice, too afraid to share our opinions and ideas,
Yeah.
do not feel supported if we do that, which is be expressive and vibrant individuals who have something to say, who aren't worried about saying the right thing, but more so want to have dialogue, right? You know, I shared this with you and with others about, my first experience in corporate America. I was working in IT and being the liaison between the business sector because I understood both languages, right? So there is a language that finance has that technology does not. Information
Yeah.
technology departments do not use, shall I say. And sometimes there needs to be a translator. Well, I remember feeling so disillusioned. I was young. I was like, oh, I can translate and help these people work together. Well, quite frankly, these two people had put on a mask for each
Yeah.
other, as opposed to taking off their mask and being like, well, let's see how we communicate with one another. Forget about Ssanyu, honestly. But let's take off these masks and just figure out how to communicate. And we don't often do this when we're trying to effect change in the
Yeah.
workplace or in an institution, because we have believed that what got us here is going to get us to the next phase.
Right.
We actually do believe what got us here is going to get us to the next phase.
Hmm.
And you just said, you tell your clients, what got us
Yeah.
here is not going to get us to the next place.
Right.
That's the truth. So if
Yeah.
that's the truth of things, then hiding behind what we call, the mask that Maya Angelou is speaking of, it could also be laughter. How many times have we
Hmm.
found ourselves laughing at someone's comment when truly we are uncomfortable
Oh, yeah.
with that comment?
Yeah.
How many of us, and these are all embodied experiences that are happening in real time as we are using our words, because the body doesn't lie,
Absolutely.
the body keeps
Yeah.
score.
Yeah.
So I work with individuals, usually one on one. Often I will weave this into the trainings that I give at different institutions and, you know, advisory boards, etc. Because to arrive in a place with people that you may or may not know very well is very important to me. So we're all at the same, what I would say, energetic level, at the same place. We're arriving at the same place, whether it's location, literally, or physically in the chair that you're sitting in. Let's recognize where we are. I don't know if you
Hmm.
recall, years ago, like, you get called into these meetings, what have you. And before the last person has even sat down, the person is like, who's leading the meeting is like, okay, so let's get right to it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, shoot, can I just get comfortable in my seat? Can I,
Yeah.
like, can, can I like let go of what I just did 10 seconds ago? No, jump right
But
in.
that would
Let's go.
assume, right? That would assume that we are fully human and are fully ourselves at work. And there seems to be this like ongoing idea that we're not allowed to be fully ourselves, right?
Uh-huh.
And how do we encourage this unmasking when like the senior leaders or many others are fighting dead set against it?
So dead set. The fight is very real, as we will say, right? It's something that we're both
Yeah.
feeling. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't have the answer to that. What I can
Mm-hmm.
say, we are being asked to make choices every single day. And my
Mm-hmm.
goal is to help individuals, communities to make the right choice every day for themselves, for their communities. And sometimes to keep one safe, we will have to put that mask on,
Right.
unfortunately. We've seen this in different organizations, different communities, particularly in the BIPOC and the LGBTQ plus community. We've seen that sometimes it's not actually safe to take the mask off. But if
Right.
there's anything that I can do to to be of allyship and support to individuals who might not feel safe to take the mask off, then I believe I made the right choice for me and that person. So if we can then get more of us who help individuals take the mask off, then we got a whole team. So can we create like a team? Can we start to create like, you know,
Yeah.
I think esoterically sometimes of like, can we create a whole country? Like, like enough of us to just be like, we will
Yeah.
help you feel safe to take the mask
Mm.
off. And maybe
Right.
sometimes that's like leveraging resources from me instead of you today, Lee, because it's not
Yeah.
safe for you to use your resource today, but it's safe for
Mm.
me to use mine.
That's the thing is the safety, and we can see it in
Mm,
organizations, we can see it
mhm.
in community, and there's so many reasons to not feel safe right now. And so I understand the need for protection. And yet I know that our future is in our continued connection and, as you say, embodied presence.
Yeah. Yes. I think of my mother and my father at this time, honestly, because I've witnessed my father go through war. So my father is Ugandan and um, he fought in the bush um, back in the 80s to free his country. And there's risk that comes with that, right? Like there's deep risk here. You're in the jungle. You're fighting, people that you've never met before. So you could do what? Well, to feel freedom. That was the thing. I think of my mother who fought against discrimination and became the first in many fields. She was one of the first women of color to be hired by Pan American Airlines back in the 60s, early 70s. She was the first to be, runner up in these different, you know, pageants that she did in high school right before college, seeing where she was being stripped away of what was hers because of the color of her skin. I've witnessed my, self growing up in a different time where we were the first, family of color in the neighborhood and having to contend with people calling me names, particularly the N name, and my mother saying, what to do when someone says that to you is to, she gave me some bad words to say. And I was like, oh, for real? Like, but that was her way
Yes.
to, right? That was her way to empower
Yeah.
me with my
Yeah.
voice. So I still sit with, I don't have the actual answer, but I have ways to chip at the ish, to chip at the
Yeah.
the bedrock where what we did to get us here needs to
Yeah.
be actually destroyed.
Oh, wow. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your experience because it helps me understand this wonderful intersection between narrative medicine, which you've told us about, and then that you are an 80th generation indigenous bone healer.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that ancestry, that lineage, that gift a bit more and tell us more about your healing?
Yes, I understood this lineage when I was a kid. Going back to East Africa for the summers. I lived there for several years during middle school and high school. So I was fortunate enough to connect with my ancestry land. Um, we have a place that has a most of all of the generations, actually. Yeah, the tombs, we have tombs there as well. So, like, I could visually see my ancestors, if that makes any sense, visually
Of
see
course.
where they're buried. And traditionally, when you come into the country, one of the first things you're supposed to do is pay your respects. So I like to think of it as like, okay, within 48 hours, 72 at the most, I must make a journey home to our land, to the burial ground, and give respect. So I have been charged with that ritual ever since I was a kid. And also, too, had experiences as a child, as a young adult, where I could feel things, see things, think of something, dream of it, and it happened the next day. Feel as if I'm being spoken to by, someone who I've never met, but I felt like I knew very much so. And that would happen whilst I was walking down a street or maybe swimming. I was a competitive swimmer, so I would often have um, information given to me in order to
Yeah.
figure out how to win the race. That's actually when I first really understood like there's something bigger than me that's happening within me or around
Mm.
me, and I didn't really have language for it. But what I will say is that my parents both believe deeply in spirit and in divine love, and in that being who we are. It doesn't live outside of us. It's in us. And so being ushered into different spaces of prayer, of meditation, um, of giving libations to the ancestors. I mean, that's a whole nother story. Though the story of the bone healer came when I woke up paralyzed from my fingers to my shoulders about 15, 13 years ago. And I didn't know what had happened. It was very scary to wake up not being able to use a part of your body. And I remember speaking to my father, who is the chief of the bone healers. At that time, when you know things, but you don't really like embody them or make note. You hear the thing, the thing is being told to you, and you're like, I understand. And then you keep going. You just keep moving on to something else in life, right? So I understood that my father was the chief, but I didn't really connect to it being of the bone healers of this shamanic lineage that I come from until I woke up paralyzed. And that was when the student was ready for the teacher moment. And as there's a lot that I went through during this time. It was about 5 months of paralysis and going to the doctors, not getting diagnosed, coming back, doing acupuncture. There's that's a whole nother story in itself as well. But just for me to stay focused on the bone healer itself and that experience of now being ushered into the lineage when I was ready to hear what I needed to hear. And that's when my father opened up to me and for me the stories that I needed to hear, the rituals I needed to connect with. And that's when the journey began of me returning home to East Africa, to Uganda particularly, with a different intention. And that intention was to connect with the soil in a different way, for me to connect with the ancestors and um, understand that there's a lineage that I'm a part of that has been asked by the community to help them be well. You know, the story of the bone healer is in the Buganda clan, which is where I'm from. We have a king, and the Kabaka is his name. And the Kabaka lives in a palace. And in this palace, he would hit his servants and sometimes break their bones. When that would happen, they would call in my family, my lineage, to not just put their bones back together, but to serve their spirit and help them move beyond the hurt and the dis-ease and the trauma. And so there's a story of the bone healers. We connect with the moon, stars, and cosmos, that which is directly connected to our home that we call Chegwe, that which illuminates and gives us information that allows us to move through the world to help others. And that literal house of Chegwe is where people of the village like to sleep in. If they were feeling ill or sometimes one would say they are, possessed, or, maybe there is issue with, fertility with a family member. They would come to our house and sleep there. And the stories are they would leave that house and they would feel better. Now, these stories, when told in my father's tongue of Luganda, they're, also illuminating some parables here, right? And illuminating some lessons to be learned. And part of that bone healer in me is to share knowledge and wisdom of these parables, that which my ancestors left, to then guide individuals, you, me, those whom we love are connecting with, back to that indigenous knowledge and wisdom that which we all come from. We all have it. And that's part of the bone healer's mission, is to be the architect or the guide back to who we truly are. And from that process of doing that, we do heal internally. I do work with individuals who have literal ailments in the body and the bones, and also healing the spirit. Excuse me, healing the soul, learning about ways in which we can slow down and methodically make better decisions because we're not rushing through the acceleration that life is often, especially in the Western world. You know, there's the combination of true fixing of an ailed body through the bones, and to connecting to the past trauma and stories that live in our body, blood, and bones, in order to accelerate the mental, spiritual, soul healing that we all can do. We just sometimes don't know how to pull out those tools from within us. And I find that high achieving individuals who learn these practices are able to not only accelerate beyond their wildest dreams, they're also teaching it to those who they're connected to. So this knowledge and wisdom is being shared. It's not supposed to be siloed in an institution. And I can say that by being a part of one. And I'm going to use me as an example to answer the question around how do we take the mask off. I just giggled after I said, I too am a part of an institution. Why? Well, that's a mask that sometimes I find myself contending with. of the professor lecturer and the person, Ssanyu. And what I have done more often than not, excuse me, is integrate the two. And because I'm sitting and reflecting on what it does mean to be a part of this institution, it's uncomfortable because my institution is unable to support the very people that are doing the good work. And that saddens me. So herein lies what we're doing now. We're talking, right? We're connecting. You have a platform, and we need to continuously share our lived stories. Um, we we must use technology and these different ways to make connections globally with individuals who are doing the work as well, and what is doing the work? Well, being in places where you may feel comfortable shaking things up, that's doing the work. Or maybe you're there to support and bring safety for individuals who want to shake things up but don't necessarily feel they can alone. Perhaps the story that you share that gives someone the opportunity to feel capable of using their voice, their authentic, true voice, to speak up not only for the other, but for themselves. We can continuously do different things, right? We need to read stories of people doing some, you know, simple, maybe it's not even doing big, audacious things. Maybe it's just simply being available for someone to talk through their issues. Maybe that's the big innovation that we need to, focus in
Mm.
on, which is deeply listening, asking people to share their stories, asking people to, share their community and connections and contacts. Remember the Rolodex back in the day? I think
Oh, yeah.
some of my mentees would not know what a Rolodex is, but
I know.
we share that Rolodex of information and contacts of individuals who financially can help us move the needle forward. This is what we do need. We need finances. We need support. We need collaborations. We need partnerships with organizations that are willing to do things differently. We're in a time where, like you said, what got us here is not going to get us to the next phase, next place. So, do we really believe in innovation then? And if an organization does, then prove it. Hire individuals that don't do things the same way that you do, but get results, and they can prove those results. There's a lot of,
Yeah.
in the clinical space, it's about, quantitative research. Well, qualitative research is very important too. The collection of
Yep.
individual stories and understanding their lived experiences is just as good as the quantitative data. Love it. I love it when they both come together. That is even
Yeah.
stronger, but it's just as strong. That qualitative method is just as strong and potent as the numbers, as the
Yeah.
science is.
Yeah. It's what brings our humanity and our integrity, as you said.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's what has moved me so much about your work is that it is about the again that reciprocity. It's about the energy between us. It's about our own relationship to ourselves and our communities. And is it okay if I quote you?
Yeah.
You wrote in a newsletter a few weeks ago, you wrote, "Your evolution doesn't require more input. It requires more wisdom about when to engage and when to simply be."
Mhm.
And that is
Mhm.
what I've learned from you, my friend, is
Mm.
a deep listening and a stillness and an ability to be more present in myself and with others. And I'm so grateful for your work and for your and for who you are in the world.
Thank you, Lee. I receive that and appreciate the energy that which we are exchanging and allowing to occur between us right now and excuse me, what we decided when we first met, which was connection was important. And so I've learned so much by being connected with you, by coming into your community and connecting with your community members and the leaders who love where they live and want to see their community healthy, and also learning from you and being able to ask questions and get curious and ideate with you and expand both our missions in this world so we can be louder. I think that's also too the intention. I think that's maybe
So we can
even
be louder.
so we can be louder. And I think maybe that is
Yeah.
part of the antidote to your question.
Mm,
I don't have an answer to it, but perhaps there's an antidote, which is we got to get louder.
yeah. Yeah. And a big part of that, I think, is through the tools and the methods that you teach. It's really being able to sit in ourselves so that we can
Mhm.
amplify
Yeah.
ourselves and each other.
Yeah.
And I will say, my friend, we met in the most corporate setting I could have possibly imagined. And I think both of us were like, get me the hell out of here. We were like, we were drawn to each other's energy, I
Yes.
think, because we are two people who have really decided to take off the mask.
Yes.
And it's really powerful to just to be in space with you and to know you. And I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you for creating the space to share and connect. Not just with you, but those who listen to your podcasts and who follow the work that you're doing in the world. That's probably the best way to get loud is to have your friends, your peers, your colleagues amplify the work that we're doing. So thank you.
Mm. Oh, and speaking of, Sunyu, how can people find you and your work?
So you can find me at sanyubirigwa.com. And I really am loving the energy of LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn at Sanyu Birigwa. And I do some, work within a container of individuals who want to refine their toolbox, as I say, and who are really looking at that, way in which they are showing up for themselves and others as a powerful part of themselves in this resonance lab that I have, that we meet twice a month. And it's a place of connection and community, working within the tools of narrative medicine and indigenous wisdom. And then you can also find me on Substack if anyone is interested in reading some of my own personal musings. They're not edited down for newsletters, or they're just really just my thoughts and connections, and oftentimes channeled wisdom and knowledge that I'm sharing with the world. So lots of different places. And of course, email. I do answer my email and I am proud of that. So I do get reflections back from individuals who read my newsletters. I send out a Sunday Pause newsletter every Sunday. I've been doing this for about 6 months now. And that's also another way to feel into the work and to the powerfulness of the potent energy that comes from slowing down, by taking a pause, by taking a breath and focusing on oneself.
potent energy of slowing down. And I will be sure to link to all of those links in the show notes. Please find Sanyu's work. It is so powerful and so needed in this moment. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast, my friend.
Thank you, Lee.